Hello, dear teacher. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Second International Conference TDC 2020. It is an honor today to accompany you. Things will be your host. My name is Jonathan Peña. I'm an INNA coordinator. Today, I have a spectacular speaker in this second blog. For example, today we can see John Galindo from Colombia and Rachel Martin from States. We are sure we'll be more than happy attending their exposition. I hope you will have a delicious lunch and reviewer energy for the next exhibition. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate the time that you take to learn more every day and continue in the struggle of the daily learning. Important, dear teacher, remember also that obtain to the certificate of attendance, you must participate at the least 4 conferences of the 5 that we are offering in total. People registered for the event will receive a link in their emails to validate their attendance. Good afternoon and welcome again, guys. Remember, okay, we stay here, we wait for the rest of the speakers, so we have to wait with really smile. So thank you to be here with us, dear teachers, and we wait for the speakers. Hello, dear teacher. I see your comments. Thank you to be here. Thank you so much. We are happy to be here with us. Thank you one more time. Okay, nice. Thank you. Thank you one more time to be here. So, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, dear teachers. So, and welcome to the Second International Conference, TDC 2020. It is an honor today to accompany you since I will be your host. You know, my name is Jonathan Peña. I'm an INNA coordinator. Today, we'll have the spectacular speaker in this second blog. For example, today we can see to John Galindo from Colombia and Rachel Martin from States. We are sure you will be more than happy attending their exposition. I hope that you had a delicious lunch and review energy for the next exhibition. Thank you for being here with us today. We appreciate the time that you take to learn more every day and continue in the struggle that lately learning. Important, dear teachers, remember also that to obtain the certificates of attendance, you must participate at the least 4 conferences of the 5 that we are offering total. People registered for the event will receive a link in their emails to validate their attendance. Welcome again and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thank you to be here with us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. We are so happy to be here with us, dear teacher. Remember, today we have an amazing speaker, John Galindo, okay, representative to Natgeo. He's from Colombia. And we can see Rachel Martin, representative to the U.S. Embassy from United States. So I hope that you receive this exposition with the best way. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Yes, I see you coming. Thank you, dear teacher. Thank you. Stay with us. Thank you. I hope that you have a great lunch. Thank you to be here with us. We wait for the rest of the speaker. So we have an amazing afternoon with them. In a few minutes, dear teacher. In a few seconds, dear teacher. Yeah, we are so ready. I read the comments. Thank you to be here with us, dear teacher. Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon to the all professors who are recognized to this TDC 2020, PIURA International, organized by IGNA Region Grau and SBS Librería Internacional. We welcome you again to this special event designed for community of English teachers. On behalf of IGNA Grau Region and SBS Librería Internacional, we would like to thank you for your attendance and enthusiasm at this event. This year has been a very difficult challenge. You know that in many different communities about in different places too, okay, to manage to respond to their circumstance. You know, the very fact that our recognizes an academic event to this provided. So let's start today's event by ourselves a few hands of recognition to this word. Thank you to all very much for your effort to this year. We started the second block remembering the word of our organizer. We start with the presentation video of IGNA Grau Region. Go ahead, team.
IGNA Región Grau es un instituto dedicado a la enseñanza del inglés y difusión de la cultura peruano-americana en nuestro país, contando con una infraestructura moderna que cuenta con los mejores equipos técnicos y humanos. Desde 1991, IGNA Región Grau se ha convertido en un referente de la enseñanza del inglés en nuestra región, donde contamos ya con 2 edificios en la ciudad de Piura y 2 filiales en las ciudades de Sullana y Talara, además de grupos de estudios en Catacaos, Paitas, Chulucanas y Tumbes. El inglés es el único idioma que compartimos y donde concentramos todo nuestro esfuerzo para poderles brindar las mejores clases. La calidad de enseñanza es nuestra prioridad y nuestro compromiso es que aprendas el inglés en un entorno cultural, actual y dinámico. Tenemos el reconocimiento y respaldo de ABLA, Asociación de Binacionales de Latinoamérica y de American Space, reconocimiento entregado por el Departamento de Estado de la Embajada de los Estados Unidos, como espacio americano de difusión de la cultura peruano-americana. Además, somos un centro autorizado para la evaluación de los exámenes internacionales de la Universidad de Michigan de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. El mundo ha cambiado y nos hemos adaptado a la nueva normalidad, brindando nuestros servicios de manera virtual sin perder la calidad de enseñanza que nos caracteriza. En la región Grau, 29 años contigo, rumbo al bicentenario.
Thank you very much, team. Now, I invite you again to get know a little more through this video, our host partner of this event, SBS Librería Internacional, who, like every year, and despite the circumstance, has enthusiastically and prepared the production of this event. Go ahead, team.
En SBS Librería Internacional estamos comprometidos con la educación. Brindamos materiales de calidad que abarcan las más diversas áreas del conocimiento humano en formatos físicos y digitales. Nuestra historia comienza hace 24 años, de la mano de nuestros líderes fundadores. Somos parte del grupo SBS Internacional, con sedes en Argentina, Brasil, Bolivia y Perú. SBS Librería Internacional crece cada día desde 1996. Hoy somos una de las cadenas más grandes en Sudamérica, orientada a producir y distribuir libros y materiales especializados en la enseñanza de idiomas. Nuestro propósito es contribuir en el quehacer educativo, profesional y cultural de nuestra comunidad. Nuestra propuesta de valor, orientada siempre al cliente, a la innovación y a la educación, nos ha permitido posicionarnos como una empresa que no solo facilita contenidos en diferentes idiomas a nuestros usuarios, sino que también nos convierte en un espacio donde se promueve el desarrollo profesional de los docentes, la generación y difusión de eventos académicos y culturales, convirtiéndonos así no solo en un lugar donde se pueda adquirir el libro deseado, sino en un espacio para estar, compartir y aprender. Con la finalidad de satisfacer los requerimientos de nuestros clientes y del mercado editorial, contamos con 16 librerías en todo el país y una renovada librería online en las que presentamos la más destacada producción e innovación editorial nacional e internacional. Somos conscientes de la repercusión de la tecnología en todo ámbito del conocimiento y la recreación, y por ello, SBS Online se posiciona como un potente canal de búsqueda y adquisición de material educativo y recreativo que permite acercar a nuestros clientes miles de títulos a pocos clics de distancia y desde la comodidad de su hogar. Nuestra propuesta editorial contiene materiales y contenidos por áreas temáticas, la enseñanza y aprendizaje de los idiomas inglés, portugués, francés, italiano, español, alemán, entre otros. La formación educativa y profesional cuenta con publicaciones especializadas, académicas y técnicas, libros de interés general con las últimas tendencias de la industria editorial, así como bibliografía clásica e imprescindible. Por todo este desarrollo e innovación corporativa, queremos compartir nuestra conmemoración. En este marco consolidamos nuestra presencia en Perú con librerías ubicadas estratégicamente en los departamentos de Lima, Cusco, Arequipa, Trujillo, Piura, Chiclayo, Iquitos, Huancayo. La librería SBS Online, servicios de delivery a nivel nacional, presencia en ferias virtuales del libro, así como presentaciones, streamings, conferencias online, concursos, promociones y sorteos, entre otras actividades. SBS Librería Internacional. Soluciones para quien enseña y para quien aprende.
Wow, amazing. Thank you very much, Ting, to being with this presentation. Now, we welcome to the Natgeo editor to this event. Thank you for your participating in this event one more year. Natgeo is a renowned publisher in Peru in the world, and to learn a little more about them, I invite you to watch the video. Let's go, team.
At National Geographic Learning, we serve English learners by reflecting the mission and work of National Geographic in our programs. We are inspired by Alexander Graham Bell's original goal for the magazine to be about the world and all that is in it. And we try to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life. If you look at our learning programs, you'll see that they're like workbook versions of National Geographic, filled with incredible photography, fascinating stories, and the real work of explorers. Explorers in particular resonate with learners because the explorer's search for knowledge and understanding is the very essence of education. At National Geographic Learning, we believe it's an incredible world, and we want to share that with students. We want students to be filled with awe and curiosity by amazing photographs and stories of their world and all that is in it. Because we know that a curious student is a motivated student, and we believe that a motivated student will be a successful student. With our programs, we're always mindful that we're not just teaching vocabulary and grammar. We're opening up the world to students who have otherwise not experienced it. Students in China, Vietnam, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Eastern Europe, literally everywhere. We want to help these students experience their world and develop their voices. Besides having great National Geographic content, we also work with TED Talks, and we are TED's exclusive partner in English language education. TED Talks are the single most widely sourced videos for English learners, popular both because of the ideas in the talks and because of the natural English used by both native and non-native TED speakers. Ultimately, the incredible content we have from National Geographic and TED enables us to develop programs that are relevant, motivating, and powerful learning tools that bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life.
Thank you, SBS. Oh, thank you, Natgeo. Very good. We are going to introduce our first speaker in this afternoon, the renowned international speaker, John Galindo, with the 10 engaging students in the virtual learning environments. John Galindo, National Geographic Learning Senior at ELT Academic Consultant for Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, Business Administrator from Universidad del Valle, Master in Marketing from ELFIT University, Colombia, about the over 20 years experience teacher at the level of ELF in both formal and non-formal education institute, interpreter in medical journals with different foundations from U.S. and non-governmental organizations. Presenter in several ETL conferences in Colombia and international seminarios, provided experiences in different fields. Curriculum developer and child certified teacher with the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Collaborator in the Broad Traveler Guide to Colombia, revising of the all colloquiums and linguistic quiz. Welcome to TDC, John.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan, for that introduction, and thanks a lot, everybody, for being here this afternoon. One of the most important things that I always tell teachers is that I've been a teacher just like you, and I've been doing a lot of these things that the pandemic has brought to us. And today, I want to share a little bit of that engagement that we need to get to our students. So, hands on with this, and I would like to start by having everyone help me with something, and it is to answer one simple question before we start working on this. What's engagement for you? What do the words engagement mean to you? What kind of things come to your mind? So I'm going to ask everybody to join us in a Mentimeter and answer your questions, please, following this QR code or following the link that we are going to share with you in a moment for you to participate. So since you have the code already, I'm going to go directly to the Mentimeter to see what kind of words come to your mind. One of the biggest challenges that we have had is communication and getting the students to be interested in participating in our classes, to do the kind of things that we want them to do. So today in this presentation, what I would like to share with you is those things that we need to keep in mind in order to be more effective in our teaching. There are many things that we need to keep in mind, but one of the most important things that we need to keep in mind is that the more engaged our students are with our class, the easier it is going to be for us to achieve those goals that we have established. So I have a couple of words now, and I have a couple of people who have voted. So I'm going to start like reading some of those words. What's engagement for you? So people agree that engagement has to do with love, with connect or be connected, get the students' attention, to be emphatic, gamification, involving students is an arrangement, and connect is taking a lot of, like one of the most important words that we have here. Motivate and motivation, yes, definitely yes. Empathy, That's good. Interest and attention, student performance. Okay, achievements, participate, caught, love, teach, commitment. So a new word that we have in this moment. Okay, and well, I have so many words, and I will get back to this, and we are going to check that in a moment. So let's go with the presentation. There are three concepts that I found, and one is being on task, thinking and enjoying the learning process. That is one of the things that is considered to be one of the definitions that I found regarding engagement. The other one will be actively participating in the learning process and being passionate and enthusiastic about all the things that we do in class. And there was another one that was being fully absorbed by whatever it is you're doing, experiencing a sense of flow. So let's compare these three definitions with the vocabulary that you were giving me in the Mentimeter. So we have connection, yes, that is one. Motivation, yes. Interest, active learning, we're going to talk about that in a moment. Understanding, rapid commitment, interest, motivate. Definitely, we are on the right path. And there is a curious thing, and it is that I always ask teachers, which of these three definitions do you think that will work better for your teaching situation? And one common denominator that I have found with the people that I have talked to is that the three of them are correct for the different teaching situations. Now, something really important is this: we need to get the students engaged. If they're not engaged, if they're not connected with our class, their brains won't be open for learning. So take for this, take for example, this Calvin and Hobbes comic, that it says, okay, Miss Wormwood, I'm not going to learn this material unless you make it in trailing. So it was like, what? Well, I see. And what will you do if the rest of your life doesn't entertain you every minute? Well, I'll put some place where it doesn't. You think I'll leave some place where it doesn't get cable? So the reflection that I always tell teachers to do is: have you ever put yourselves in the situation of the student? Have you ever gone to the place where your students are? This is one of the most important things that I always tell teachers, and it is that we need to put ourselves in the shoes of the students. We need to understand how they feel during a virtual class. We need to understand what the experience of being in front of the computer by turning on their cameras, and everything that is happening in a class. So I borrowed this from a fellow teacher, and it is one of the most important things that we need to keep in mind when we are working on these virtual learning environments, and if we want everyone to get connected. It is good instruction giving. It's really important that we keep in mind a couple of things when we are giving the students instruction during our lessons. The first thing that we need to keep in mind is that we need to speak simply but clearly. We need to give the instructions in such way that our students understand each of the steps that we want them to do. So it is like when they tell us to go to the supermarket and buy the groceries for the food that we're going to prepare over the weekend. So we need to get specific instructions in order not to buy the wrong things. So one of the suggestions that I'm giving to everyone is break the instructions down into different parts. First, I want everybody to do this and model that activity that you're doing with the students. Eh, then I want you to do this. Then you're going to do this part. Then you're going to the other part. So it's easier for them, because if we are understanding like this step by step that the teacher is giving in the class, it is going to be much easier for them to understand it. Then something crazy. What kind of things are you doing to be disruptive in your class? Well, something that may sound funny, but it is effective, is that you get the students' attention with something else. I use something different when I want to get my students' attention. And I use whistles, I use different things so my students know that they're going to be doing an activity and they're going to be active doing one of the activities in the class. Something really important, please check for understanding. It is really important that we verify that everything that we have told them was clearly understood. This is one really important thing. Now, how do we do that? Well, we just model the instructions. We say, okay, for instance, I want everybody to take the pen and start opening the activity, and you show the students. Depending on the level, the instructions may vary a little bit from time to time, but it's basically the same principle that we have there. What is the other important thing? Somebody told me in the vocabulary in the Mentimeter that we need to work on active learning. This is one of the most important part. Get the students to do something and do activities that are meaningful for them. I mean, I don't know if the majority of the teachers here are vintage, just like me. I'm not old, I'm vintage. And I always tell people that in the past they just gave us like a bunch of exercises to fill in the blanks, just to match one word with the other, but they didn't tell us why. They say because you gotta practice, you gotta practice, that's all you have to do, you have to practice. Yeah, but we didn't find it meaningful. In real life communicative situations, we are not going to fill in the blanks, we're just going to need to express different things. So what is the best way? Get the students in different activities that they see that they're going to use in their real life. This is one of the most important things that we need to keep in mind. The other thing is, I always tell people, as a good marketer and as a good teacher, I do research on what kind of activities are the activities that my students really like. So, for example, some of my students tell me, well, teacher, we like videos, but we don't like to use so many videos in the class. So I change the activities. I can use exactly the same video, but I use it in different ways. So my students will narrate what's going on in the video. So my students create the voice of the characters, interacting, that they change the dialogues. I mean, there are so many activities that I can do when I'm using videos. And I get my students to tell me what kind of topics they like. Sometimes my students like music, sometimes my students like science fiction, so I can use these characters, for example, in my presentations, in the kind of things that I'm doing, etc., etc. So it is going to be much easier for them to be there for the activities that I want. Okay, now hands on. Let's see some ideas that we can get to engage our students in our classes. And I am going to show you just some logos, and I'm going to give you some ideas that you can use in class. Probably you know some of these, but probably you don't know any of these. Now, I see, for example, that I have different ways, okay, to use apps. For example, I love to use one in my cell phone that I'm going to show you. It's called ChatterKit. In ChatterKit, what my students do is this little logo that you have here. In ChatterKit, what the students do is that they simply go and learn, okay, from they use pronunciation, I'm sorry, in a different way. What they do is that they have objects speak, okay, or they have their own picture. Sometimes they tell me like, "Uy, teacher, I don't want to be on camera. I feel embarrassed. I don't look good on camera." Okay, and I tell my students, okay, get the best picture that you have and have that picture do the introduction for you. So I have, for example, this one, and it's my monkey friend, and my monkey friend does the speaking for me. So they don't feel shy of showing themselves on camera. And in Okay, so if they feel embarrassed, why not using videos in a different way? I'm not gonna go over quizzes. I know people know quizzes very well. So everybody has done quizzes for doing different types of activities. But I'm going to use another one that it is to get my students to work on different vocabulary or on different types of activities. And this is one of the resources that I got from some teachers while giving one of these presentations, and they told me like, hey, have you ever tried puzzle.org? And I was like, okay, this you can use. I get my students to work on some vocabulary, and I tell my students, this is the reading that we are doing. I want everybody to please extract the vocabulary that you think that you need to study, that you need to review, that you need to work on, and challenge your classmates, okay, to create the most difficult, in this case, the most difficult crossword puzzle. So they have to give definitions for words that we have. In this case, I just did an example with three. I say strange, mystery, technology, and I got my students to give their own definitions. When you get the possibility to get your students to create their own definitions, it is going to be much easier for them to remember, because what they are using is the vocabulary that they consider that is easier. Now, let me go back to other characteristic that we have with Puzzle. The other thing is that, for example, I can get my students to create jigsaw puzzles, and it is going to be much easier for them to do it. What I usually do is that I take my students to a one picture, okay, to get one of the pictures from the topics that we are discussing in class, and create something like this, a jigsaw puzzle. So it is really easy. The good thing, for example, about this tool is that the students can get a picture from anything that they are doing in class, and they can challenge their classmates to organize the jigsaw in the shortest time possible. So when the students see something like this, they have to, for example, guess what the word is, or guess what the place is, connect vocabulary to the place where they are working on. They can create different things. It's really easy. Just find a picture. Let me get to my account. Find a picture, okay, and give the link to the students so they discover what the picture is about. I'm going to go to my account, and I'm going to show you what I've got here. Just give me a second. Okay. So I have one here that is a jigsaw. And what I usually tell my students is, okay, guys, you can upload any picture that they have. Okay. In this case, I uploaded a picture of a strange animal, one of these Natgeo animals. And I tell my students, okay, you're going to play. So students upload any picture about any topic that they're working on. And this can be a great idea for those classes in which you get the students to solve mysteries or to solve problems, to figure out like what is behind that, etc., etc. And if you see, I have the possibility just to move around and to create different things. You can use any picture that you have in your computers. You can use pictures about different topics, and you can use different things. This is one of the tools that I have. But we need to get the students to work on other type of activities. So in this case, for other type of activities, I love to use one of the characteristics that is given by Google in this moment, and it is that my students are using something that is called Quick Draw. In Quick Draw with Google, what I tell my students is to first share their screens. when they share their screens, they are going to find different vocabulary about different things. Okay, all I have to do is just select the English version, and I tell my students, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to draw the words that we have here. The words are random. They appear at random. So, for example, I tell, okay, I have to draw a river. Okay.
I see
So
ocean.
what it tells me is this.
Oh, I know. It's river.
So now I have to draw a skull. I'm very
I
terrible
see
for
knee. Or nose. Oh, I know. It's skull.
it tells me draw a sun. Okay, I got it easy
I
this
see
time.
circle. Or cherry. Oh, I know. It's sun.
And then I have to draw a bed.
I see elbow. Or pillow. Or keyboard. Oh, I know. It's bed.
So if you see, I'm using artificial intelligence. Oh my God, this is the most difficult. An elephant. So this is it. This is the
I
trunk.
see heart.
This is the ear.
Or shoe.
And this is the body. I'm
Or
terrible
dog.
for drawing. My
Or
students
fan.
laugh at me all the time.
Or stove. Or duck. I see horse. Or sheep.
You see, it's
We have to wait. We have some technical problems. Okay, we have to wait for this speaker. So he has some problems. So we have to wait. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We see the same one. So he has some problem. We have to wait for him. Okay, he has some problems. Okay. We're so happy that you stay here. So we have to wait, okay, for John Galindo. Okay, he have some problems with his connection, so we have to wait for him, right? So we have to stay. Hello, one more time. Hello again.
hello. I'm sorry. We just had a
Don't worry.
power
Don't worry.
outage.
We wait for you. Don't worry.
We just had a power outage here. Okay. I'm going just to
Understandable.
continue where we were. Okay. So I was telling you that one of the things that we do with this is just to get 6 words at random. And after the 6 words that we get at random, what we do is that we get the students to create a story. This works perfect with those students in an advanced level that they know a lot of vocabulary, and we need to test their creativity. You know, we need to challenge them to do different things. This is just another possibility that we have when we want to get our students to participate in class and to do different things. What comes out of this? Well, you know, pure creativity from your students, which is one of the most important things that we need to do. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is that there are more interactive whiteboards that you can use. And in this case, I'm showing you one that is called awwapp.com, awap.com. And something really easy. Sometimes we just need our students to work on a different activity. We don't have access to Jamboard. We don't have access to Padlet. We don't have access to many other tools that we have for collaborative activities. So what we give our students is the possibility to use something where they can interact and they can create different concepts. I use this, for example, for brainstorming. All the students have to do, and I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a try now, is that I'm going to share this link. Please, everybody in the backstage, help me with this. And all I do is that I share the link and everybody can start collaborating and everybody can start helping me with the activity that I am doing on the board that I have here. In the classrooms, we had people, go to the board, we gave them a marker, etc., and we had everybody write or draw different things, etc. But this is a good alternative if we have some apps forbidden in our school. This happened to me a couple of weeks ago with an institution where we were sharing these kind of tools and doing these kind of things. So if you see, people start appearing, okay, and people start moving around. So what you do is that you get everybody to participate. At the beginning, it is crazy when you try to get everybody to do something, but you will see that your students are going to have fun because you challenge them, for example, to draw something, to do a little bit of a interactive TPR activity, and you tell them to draw, for example, the sun. So I have a sun over here. So I get my students to draw, for example, a shoe. So let's see who draws the shoe first. And I have a lot of people working over there. But nobody has drawn the shoe. So this is the kind of activity that will entertain your students a lot and will help them, boost that creativity with the activities that they are doing in class. There is another tool that I wanted to share with you, and it is something that I use to get my students to practice their writing, and is Pixton. In Pixton, what I tell my students to do is to create comics. But to create the comics, first they need to create their avatars. And to create their avatars, what you can do is that you can tell, for example, not to turn on their cameras. Now it's very common. And we tell our students, okay, give a physical description and have another person create your avatar to practice physical descriptions. And this is a great way to get everybody to participate in the activities that we have in class. So what I'm going to show you one example of what I did, and it is this. I say, good morning, guys. You're going to create 2 frames of a cartoon in our instructions, or good morning, everyone. In this session, and I get my students to create their own comic, to create their own story, to do different things. And this is a great way to get everybody to practice writing, to practice vocabulary, to practice grammar, to practice different things. And as you see, most of the things that I'm showing you, encourage everybody to be creative, which is like one of the most important things that we need nowadays. If you see, there are different scenarios, different backgrounds that they can use. And in the characters, the faces that they have, the facial expressions, etc., it's up to your creativity to use this tool or things like this. And there are many other tools, many other things that I wish we had a lot of time, but before we go to that, I would like everybody to do one activity with me. Okay, we're going to collaborate, everyone, and it is an activity in which everybody's going to help me kind of summarize all this thing about engagement. So I'm going to get everyone to please go to this. If your name starts from A to F, you're going to scan this QR code. Okay? If your name starts from A to F, you're going to scan this QR code. And people here in the backstage is going to give me a hand. I'm going to share the link. Okay? And if people's names start from G to L, you're going to scan this QR code. These QR codes correspond to different pictures, okay, that are related to the topic of the presentation today. If your name starts from M to R, scan this QR code. And if your name starts from from S to Z, please scan this QR code. So everyone is going to have a different QR code, a different picture from the QR code. Okay, so what I'm doing is that I am sharing in this moment. Give me a second. My internet is not so good today. Gosh. And I'm going to give the links for the different pictures that I have here in a moment to the people in the backstage. Okay, so you can give me a hand with that. So everyone is going to go to these pictures, analyze the pictures, and when everyone has analyzed the pictures, I want you to do something, and it is help me, okay, write your comments on a Padlet. And this is an activity that you can do with your students. I use it, for example, when I want to give my students different parts of a reading comprehension activity. So what I do is that I give them different parts of a reading. I have them read, I have them scan this QR code from the presentation that I have. And in the end, my students will have to put the story together. So they have to first read, second, they have to paraphrase what they understood, or they can do a recording explaining what they understood. And after that, they will have to organize the reading into a different order. Okay. And after that, what you do is that you get everyone to please answer some questions. So the link for the first one, for the first picture is this one. People in the backstage, please give me a hand with this. This is picture number 1, the first link that I shared. Picture number 2 is this link. Picture number 3 is going to be this. And picture number 4 is going to be this. Okay, so if you help me over there, thanks a lot. So this is what we usually do with this. When everyone has analyzed the picture, okay, what we are going to do is that we are going to share what we understood, what we analyzed from the picture. We're going to do it here. We're going to share the comments on this Padlet. So if you see, is the same typical activity that we have with Padlet, but we use it in a different way. So it's using all tools in new ways. That's what I always invite people to do. Use the technology in different ways. So for the Padlet, if you don't have the possibility to scan the QR code, I'm going to share with the people in the backstage. This is the link for the Padlet. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. So don't worry if you are using your cell phone to be connected with this. I know that we have 312 people connected. Now I know that some of you may be using computers, some of you may be using other types of things. So let's check the comments that we have in the Padlet. Some people may be connected to the Padlet. So what you do is that you use Padlet, the same tool that we have in other times, okay? We use it in a different way for reading comprehension activities, for videos, because the students can upload a short video on this on this tool, okay? Students can record voice notes, they can upload pictures, their own picture, they can do different activities and different things. So if you see, I already say a group of people, the motivation of the teacher, the people feel happy to study, okay, a group of people walking. So if you see, I start getting feedback and we are doing an activity at the same time. I got people engaged. I got people engaged. And this is the kind of things that we need everybody to do. Get your students to do something. Get your students to describe situations. Get your students to talk about themselves and use the most important information for them, the information that they have about themselves. When you involve them, they will learn more easily and they will do all the other activities. Okay, good. So there are a lot of students, and you see I have a lot of comments here, a lot of people saying different things about this. I see people with backpacks, teachers, we are influencers. Okay, fantastic. There are a lot of teachers, there are a lot of things useful in class like this, influencers. Wow, I'm so happy to get everybody to participate. It's so nice. It's so nice, guys, that you are really, really connected with this. Okay, I'm gonna start showing the pictures for the others. So what you do, what you see is that you have different pieces of information. And here is the first message that I have for you. Teachers are the real influencers. I mean, when people tell me like, okay, I don't know who from the United States is an influencer. We are the influencers. We are the ones who have to control 20, 40, 60 students or more in a classroom. So we are the real influencers. We are the ones who are shaping the future. We're shaping everyone. So keep that in mind. We are the real influencers. So teacher, you see a happy teacher here, you know? The other one, we are there for our students and we're always going to be there even though we are not next to them, because I know that this may be nostalgic for a lot of people when you say like, I miss, you know, being with my students and helping them and interacting with them, etc. But there are other ways in which you can do this, okay, in which you can be with your class, with your students in the virtual classrooms. So keep this in mind. Your digital presence is really important. Your Google Classroom, your blog, your Instagram account where you share different things, your Facebook for professional purposes account that you have. All these things help. You know, the way that the students feel you, that you are so close to them, that you are there to help you, to help them. I'm sorry. The other thing, yes, this is going to be us at the end of the pandemic. You know, going to the classrooms, going back to the institution, going back to the buildings. Very happy. This is not going to be forever, but in the meantime, we need to get the students, you know, connected with our classes. We need to get everybody happy and participating and learning, which is one of the most important things that we have over there. So yes, we're gonna be back, you know, with that big smile on the face. And the last picture that I was sharing with you is, okay, give me a second. Something happened here that I repeated one of the pictures. Okay. Okay, give me a second. I don't have the other picture. Pick number 3. Okay. This is it. I'm going to share the other picture here. The other picture is this one. We teachers have been real warriors. You know, we have been in the most difficult situations. If you see, this is a teacher, a very committed teacher, just like all the teachers in Latin America now, really committed to the learning process of their students. So keep doing it. Keep doing it. It's really worth it. We are helping the students from all Latin America, you know, get a powerful tool that is the tool of the language. Okay? So with this last picture, I'm going to invite everyone to create those websites, to do different things, okay? And to please share the knowledge with your fellow teachers. This is one of the most important things. Together, we can make a big, big difference with the with our classroom, with our teaching situation. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. I know the time has been short, but I hope that it has been productive, that I have given you a couple of ideas to use in your classroom. Okay, this is it. Jonathan, I just have to say thanks a lot. And I don't know if you have got any questions in the last minutes that we have of the presentation.
No, thank you. Thank you for you being here with us. So the all question, your response maybe with this period of the time. So you are amazing. It was a great exposition that you tell us. So a lot of information, a lot of application. So we have them engaged with the new student. When you can see everybody has to do with the technology. So the young learners is connected with the technology. The young learners likes. So this kind of tip that you can tell us. So was so interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your experience with us, with all information that you can tell us. So thank you to be here, dear John, and see you the next opportunity.
Okay, thanks a lot and a big hug for everybody. Bye-bye. Have a good one.
Thank you. So now we want to thank and welcome to our second speaker in this afternoon to the Embassy United States of America, which is also permanently present in the academic and cultural life of our country and our region. Now, we introduce our second speaker, as I told you, okay, Renew, international speaker Rachel Martin, on the 10 connecting and disconnecting, keeping our focus on essential principles of language learning. Rachel Martin is a US-based English teacher, teacher trainer, and curricular developer who has worked in Senegal, Peru, and Paraguay. She holds a Master Arts of Teaching, teacher certificate, and Washington State Teaching Endurance ELA in elementary education. She has taught to students of all ages, from the preschool to adults. Rachel was an English teacher fellow in Lima, then the virtual English classes and language fellow, and currently the English language specialist based out of the Relo Andes office. Welcome to TDC, Rachel.
Hi, Jonathan. It's good to be here.
Thank you.
Seems like it's been a very busy day. It's great. It's great to have everyone here. Thank you for joining us. So, like Jonathan said, today I'm going to be sharing about some of the essential principles, some of the things I want to make sure we haven't forgotten. There are so many things, this year to keep in mind. And with the workshops all day, it has been great to get all of this information. So we're kind of at the end of the day now. So I put, some coffee cups on there. You can grab your coffee mug and sit back and kind of review a little bit. And I'll give you some new information as well. I do want to say hello from the state of Montana. So as it was mentioned, I've been very lucky to live different places in the world, including 3 different regions in the US. But I always like to just point out where I'm at. So it's a very rural state, lots of nature. It's a very large state. And the question I keep getting, yes, we do get snow. So with that out of the way, let me really jump into our topic here. So when I was preparing this, when I was thinking, what are some of the final takeaways that we might want to focus on here as we've been talking all day about English learning online? There's so many different principles I could have selected, but I want to just talk about 3. So today I want to talk about the effective filter, opportunities for input, and the importance of meaningful practice. Okay, so I'm hoping we can make this pretty interactive. I'm going to ask questions throughout this presentation, and I am able to see, I love technology. I can see your comments here. So when I ask a question, I really do hope that you will respond, that we can interact a bit here. So yes, hello to Maria, to Madeline, to Gabriel, to Rosario, to Elizabeth. Yeah, keep it coming there. I'm going to be watching the chat, so please let's talk as we go here. So effective filter, opportunities for input, meaningful practice. You ready? Okay. So the effective filter. Maybe this sounds familiar, maybe it doesn't. I'm going to just ask, what do you already know? What is the effective filter? If you are familiar with this term, if you recognize this, please put something in the chat there. And for some of these questions, for questions like this, I'm also going to give you a hint. So the hint here is Stephen Krashen. If you know the name of that linguist, if you've ever heard his theories, the effective filter relates to some of them. Okay, so I'm looking. Okay, the effective filter. It's really the idea that non-linguistic factors can block language acquisition. What does that mean? Well, let me give you some of my the ways I think about this. Oh, I see it right there in the chat. Someone got the 3 of them. Thank you so much there. Oh, it went back so fast. I think that was Louise. Motivation, self-confidence, and anxiety. And Roberto added in here that the emotional environment, how someone is feeling in class, makes a difference. Sometimes I think we have this reputation as English teachers that we really care about how our students are feeling. And that, is because English teachers are caring people, but it's also because it really matters when you're learning a language. So here's the way I think about it. This is the metaphor that I like to use. Picture a window. So maybe you have, blinds, you have curtains on the window. And when they're open, when there isn't anything blocking, the sunlight can come in, it can warm you up. If we make this into the metaphor I want to use here, if the curtains are open, if the blinds are open, the language can get through, the student can soak it up, the student can really learn a lot from it, they can start to acquire it and be ready to use it. But if you have the shades closed, if you have the blinds closed, or if there's something in the way, those things that can get in the way that we mentioned, a lack of self-confidence, having anxiety, a lack of motivation, well, those are things that are blocking the sunlight from getting through the window, or they're blocking the language from getting through to the student. So I put them on the picture here to kind of start to block the sunlight. But I think a lot of our students, a lot of my students at least, they've really come into class with a lot of anxiety. And especially this year, their self-confidence is low and their anxiety is super high. So their emotions are blocking their learning. That's the idea of the effective filter. Some of the students look more like this with so much anxiety, that motivation, lack of self-confidence. There isn't much sunlight coming through in this picture, just like there isn't a lot of learning, a lot of acquisition of the language coming right through. I'm going to just pause for a moment and say hello to people from the chat. I see Yorka, Marlene, Alicia, Roberto. So many people here. Thank you. Oh, I think I saw someone from Mexico in there. Keep it going. I'm glad to have you all here right now. So the affective filter, we've now mentioned what it is. I think we all know what it is. Most people recognized it a bit. Yeah, an elbow bump to you too, Irma. When we're talking about the affective filter in a face-to-face class, and what we used to do last year, feels like a million years ago, we would always talk about you want to lower the affective filter by making the students feel at ease and really helping the students believe that they can be successful. Well, I think we can apply, I know we can apply those same two kind of broad strategies when we are talking about the affective filter in distance learning and in an online class. So even in this setting, digitally, distance, we are still talking about helping students feel at ease and helping students believe they can be successful. And this is a big challenge because just like Matilde pointed out there in the comments, the context this year is overwhelming. Face-to-face is totally different in many ways, but the same principles, I believe, apply. We still need to do these two things here. We need to help students feel at ease, as comfortable as possible, and we have to help them believe that they can succeed. Now, the methods, the means, those are going to look different, of course. So let's get into it some more. When we're talking about helping students feel at ease, especially this year, we have to realize that there can be some, language-related sources of stress. They have stress because of the online format. And then they have all the stress, so much stress happening in their real life. All of those are things that can be blocking their learning. So what are some of the online class related sources of stress? Things that are new to the students, new stress, new things that are raising that affective filter that are new this year. You put some of that in the chat there. I'd like to hear, I agree with Jean-Paul that the affective filter is different in the present context. So let's talk about some of those ways. How is it different? I think one of them is that students are concerned about getting connected. So many students, are sharing devices. They might not be able to come to class on time because someone else needs it, or they're worried that they won't be able to get to the phone that has WhatsApp on it because someone else in the family, hasn't come home with the phone. The fear of getting disconnected in the middle of class. I think technology, while it is great, has been a source of a lot of stress this year, whether it's, is my technology going to work today? Or I have no idea how to use this and it's completely new. And that can be a source of stress there. So connection, technology, having to learn a whole new kind of skill set there. But we also have to really recognize, how much stress is in our students' life right now. Sometimes language class, which, in the past used to take up this much of their space in their brain. Now it's taking up this much space just because there's so many other things in there. Someone put a question in the chat there about how to create specific tools. And you know what? We'll talk a little bit about specific tools later, but that's something we can chat about later on. So, there's another source of stress. Franco just said that some students feel daunted to speak because they can be heard by other members of their family. Exactly. When you don't have much privacy, that can be difficult, especially, if other people in your family don't speak English, They wonder what you're doing. It can be embarrassing. They don't want to connect their cameras. If the stuff behind you isn't pretty, or if maybe you're very tired, you don't feel like you want to be seen by the world. Yeah. Okay, we're identifying a lot of them here. So thank you. Thank you for answering in the chat. I'm so glad you're a really interactive audience today. This is awesome. Thank you. So now that we've kind of identified some of these, our students are closer to their technology than ever, but they are feeling kind of disconnected. They're losing some of that face-to-face teaching, or that face-to-face connectedness. What can we do about this? What are some of the strategies we want to be thinking about? So these are not groundbreaking. These are the same things you were doing before, but they've taken on a different dimension. So ways to help students feel at ease. Build a community of learners. How can we create and foster that connectedness between students? Build trust in the teacher, which is, of course, harder to do when they don't see you every week. They don't get to know you in the same way. I know several teachers. I was talking to a teacher yesterday in Bolivia, even, who was talking about how she's been teaching mindfulness to her students. And I know a lot of teachers have actually taught lessons on stress reduction, or they've included videos on growth mindset, or some of those things. They've been teaching those strategies directly. And then when I say make sure students have the tools, that last point on there, I'm not talking about technology necessarily. I'm talking about for the assignments that you're giving them. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But just if you're asking them to work on one thing, making sure that they know where to find the resources, or really the lesson and the tasks focus on something that they're capable of doing, not something where they have to flip to 8 different sets of notes, or it's something that they probably haven't remembered from 3 weeks ago. Keeping the assignments at an appropriate level of challenge, I think, helps them feel successful. So how are you building a community of learners? That's my next question here. If you want to type in the chat, I would love to hear some of your answers there. Right now, I'm actually teaching adult students. I was teaching high school or secondary students a couple of months ago, but we changed our terms here in the US. So I'm working with adults right now. And some of the most important ways that I build community is just having a little bit of time before and after class where we can chat a bit, where there's this idea of they can stay and they can talk a little bit. I know I always ask them, to share about their hobbies, and as they become more comfortable with each other, as it's, gone on week after week, they're sharing some of the things that have been difficult in their week, and they're finding support with each other. In the same way, building the trust in the teacher, it comes over time from interaction. So they know that I'm there and I'm on their side. They know that I want to see them be successful. And that's kind of, an attitude, but it's also, answering their emails or answering WhatsApps and just being friendly. I think having to be more friendly than before, because I see them less, and they don't get all the body language. They don't get all the context. So being super intentional about building those connections when I can. All right, so I love some of the comments that are coming here about, how students, if you have students who can turn on their cameras, they're saying they have lunch together. That sounds wonderful. I mean, you've really made them a group and kind of gotten over that, I don't want to be on camera, actually enjoying that interaction. That's great. Someone said sometimes adult students behave like children. I have taught all ages, and you start by looking at your students and appreciating them as a person who's dealing with their emotions and what they're trying to do and get through the day. Oh yeah, everyone has big emotions and is trying to do the best they can. Let's see. It's crucial to strike up a nice relationship with our students. Oh, there's some ideas there. Facebook group or a blog. Yes. Thank you for sharing those ideas, Franco. All right. So these were some thoughts. These were some ideas, and you're contributing so many ideas here in the chat. It's so great today. Those were about how to help students feel at ease. Now I want to talk a little bit more about how to kind of build their confidence. So really helping students believe that they can be successful. Because I think a lot of students have had trouble believing that this year. Students sometimes are so used to waiting for their teacher to tell them if they did a good job, or they're so used to the teacher telling them how to do every step, they've been worried that they can't succeed on their own. So really helping them believe that they can is really important. So again, these are things that we might do in a face-to-face class, and we definitely still can do online to be really intentional with our positive, helpful feedback. We want to make sure our students have examples of success and that they're self-monitoring growth over time. So when I talk about, I don't think I'm going to talk too much about the feedback today, because we should do an entire webinar just on feedback. So let me just kind of skip over that one, even though now that we're online, we don't want to skip over it. That's one of our main ways we have connection. So let's talk about examples of success. I think it is so important that students can see role models, that they can see themselves in the materials they're reading. So the materials that they read or what they watch or what they listen to needs to be culturally relevant and culturally appropriate for students. And you know your context. So I encourage you, I challenge you to find materials. And I know you probably don't get to pick your textbook or get to pick the big curriculum, unless you're a curriculum director watching, in which case, this is for you too. But when you're choosing supplemental materials, even just the pictures that go on a slideshow, making sure that they're very inclusive and that they reflect and represent your students so that they feel included in that success. All right, let's see. Let me check the comments here. Exactly. I love that line there. Matilde is saying it is important that they know everyone is special and powerful in different ways. Exactly. This is something that's so important. Our students need to see themselves as being successful, and they need to know that everyone around them can be as well, and actually truly believe that. That's wonderful. All right, so let's move into this third one here. And this one, I'm afraid, is a little bit of a kind of a long sentence or a long phrase: self-monitoring growth over time. What do I mean by that? What am I talking about there? Let me hear your thoughts on that in the chat. Okay, so I'm just reading here. Great. Self-monitoring growth over time. Well, self-reflection and growth over time. So we have, I am having trouble making this click all the way through. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Sometimes you can't quite make your slides do what you want. So self-monitoring growth over time. It starts with that self-reflection, being able to evaluate yourself, know how you're doing as a student. Like I said before, sometimes students are really just waiting for the teachers to tell them how they're doing, and getting them out of that habit, getting them into the autoevaluación is so important. But then you have to add in really following their own progress. Can they see growth? Not just reflecting on themselves and saying, here I was good or here I was bad, but seeing, you know what, I didn't know that in March, or I didn't know that in June, but now I know how to do that. And really, when you can combine that self-reflection with seeing how growth has happened, it can help students develop the mindset of I can do this. And that I can do this mindset really helps students engage with the class. We spend so much time talking about motivation or talking about how to motivate our students. Well, that I can do this comes from within them. So some of the ways to develop that, to really help students build their sense of I can do this. I know many of you, if you're teaching in Peru, your students are supposed to be making a portfolio this year. So really working with portfolios, whether that's a requirement coming from Minedu or if you're just doing that for your own class, get your students to save some samples of their work so they can look at it and see how it improved over the course of the year. Maybe it got longer. Maybe it took them less time to complete it. Something that I really like to do in my classes, especially when I'm teaching secondary or young secondary, students who are like 13 or 14 years old, I like to have them write kind of a journal. So every day or at the end of every class, I get them to write a sentence or two about what did they do. Today, I wrote 3 sentences about breakfast. Today, I talked with my classmates in English. Today, I shared a funny story. Whatever that is, even if it's small, if they write 1 or 2 or even 3 sentences, over time, they can look back at this log, at this record of everything they've accomplished. Of course, another strategy, if you like to use graphic organizers, if you want to help guide them a little bit, something called a Kwl chart. You do this with a class where the K stands for know. What do I already know about this topic? The W is what do I want to learn? And then after they finish the lesson or the unit, you come back and you fill in what have I learned. So that really shows progress over time. And I'm going to talk more about those a little bit later on, I think. But concrete numbers really help students. So if they know they've got faster in their reading speed, or now they're reading a more difficult passage, something where it's a really, truly concrete number, they trust that because they know it wasn't just made up to make them feel good. So that I can do this, I changed it here to say, and I will get things done, because I kind of want to share a little bit of a personal story here. I think everyone arrives at that sense of, I can do this, that self-confidence in a different way. For me, when I was right out of university, I don't think I want to say how many years, probably it's been like 15 years now. I joined a program called AmeriCorps, which is a program we have in the United States. You can take a year and you volunteer for your community. You have a project and you go and you work full time, but you're a volunteer. You're in service to your community for 1 year. And part of joining that, there's a motto for it. And even though I haven't been in the program in, like I said, 15 years, part of that I've always kept with me. Like I have it up on my wall up there and it says, faced with apathy, I will take action. Faced with conflict, I will seek common ground. Faced with adversity, I will persevere. I will carry this commitment with me this year and beyond. I am an AmeriCorps member and I will get things done. And I've always loved that line. So that's what I want my students to feel, that sense, and I will get things done. Do this by a really good calendar. Actually make charts. Sometimes, they just need a note of encouragement from their teacher. I want to transition now here. I want to transition into my second point. So the first one was talking about the objective filter. Now I really want to talk about the importance for input. Input in learning here. So opportunities for input is my little title. What does that mean? What do you think I mean when I say opportunities for input? And just like before, I'm going to give a little hint here. So my hint is, if you've ever heard I+1, or set it input before output. So either of those. What do I mean when I'm talking about opportunities for input here? Okay, so type your ideas in the chat. And what I mean by this is how important it is that students need to hear and read examples of English that they can understand before they produce language themselves, okay? They need to hear and read examples of English before they produce the language themselves. We can't rush through it. Yes, Laura, it is still crashing. I'm still putting that in there. Remember, this is about the essentials. So we're coming back to those things that maybe you learned in your teacher training, but we want to look at how does this apply online? So when you were in a face-to-face classroom, what are some of the things that you used for input? I'd love to see some of your answers here in the comments. Like, what do you use so your students can listen to or can read English? What are the sources that they get to take it in from? I know you probably have a lot of different materials, but what are some of those things? Let's try and make a list here. You make the list in the chat. Let me show you kind of my list here. I know when I am in a face-to-face classroom, we have audio files. You know, sometimes they come along with the book or something. You have like the CD that you put in. I like to show videos, you know, from YouTube or something. A lot of times when I'm in a face-to-face room, I have internet there. You know, you have posters, or you have things maybe you've put up in your room to help show students English, have it around them. And I always love to bring items in. I always collect posters and schedules and maps and anything that menus from restaurants. I just bring things in because I think that when my students can, you know, hold it and touch it and see it, it makes it more real. These are all great things. I'm here looking here with people talk about songs, posters, realia, images, audio. Oh, it's been going so fast. I can't even keep up with all of these. I'm watching the comments come in from both YouTube and from Facebook. That is great. Yes, lots of games, podcasts, radio shows, videos. Exactly. We have a whole library of things, you know, that you've probably been collecting for years as a teacher. Props, news extracts, posters, songs, magazines. Ivan said it very well right there. Ivan just wrote, being exposed to the target language is key. Exactly. So we do all of this when we're face-to-face, but now being online, really the challenge is distribution. You know, the challenge is how do we get these items to our students? How do we get it to them? Sometimes, you know, many students do not have Wi-Fi or they have extremely limited data. So if it's a large file download, that can be an issue. You know, streaming, it works for some students, it doesn't work for others. Something that just comes up a lot now, I've realized, you know, for many things, I had one copy of them. I have my teacher copy that I usually bring into the class and I show everyone. Well, I don't have copies for all of my students. And, you know, due to copyright, I really can't make, well, copyright and practicalities. I can't really make 30 copies of this. That wouldn't be right. So the challenge is, how do we get things to students that, one, they can access, and two, it's going to really support what we're doing in class. So what we're really looking for right now for good input sources. We're looking for low data versions of materials. This PowerPoint, this presentation that I'm showing you, when I went to email it to the conference coordinators, when I went to email it to them, it was too big to attach to an email. I mean, it's a giant file with lots of images. This is kind of the opposite of a low data version. We're looking for things that can be sent by WhatsApp. A lot of times teachers are asking me for, .pdfs, or they're asking for audio files. And we don't want to lose in this as we're looking for things that are easy to send. We are still looking for things that are very high quality and that are representative. So like I mentioned before, it's really important that our materials don't perpetuate stereotypes, that our materials are culturally appropriate, that our materials are culturally relevant to our students. So let me share with you just a couple of sources that I do like to use, that I'm currently using or I've used this year as I've been teaching online. So one website I hope you are all familiar with, but if you haven't visited it or if you haven't visited recently, they do keep uploading new resources. So we have americanenglish.state.gov. That's a U.S. State Department website where all of the resources are free. So all the resources are free and many of them can be downloaded into a WhatsApp-friendly format. So you can search on there for materials to use directly with students. There's one series on there called American Teens Talk, which has kind of short interviews with teenagers in the US, and you can download it as an audio file. You can download the transcript as a PDF. I love using those for sources. You can search, it's a very searchable website, so you can look for things related to the 4 different skills. You can look for songs if you want to use them. So I just recommend check this out. There are also resources there that are professional development opportunities, but there is a lot on this website that is student ready. So americanenglish.state.gov, check it out for things that you can download, you can use immediately with your students. Another couple of websites that I'll just give you these here. These are ones that I often go to when I'm looking for input for my students. There's a website called Newsela, and it's a US-centered website. It's mostly used by schools here in the US, but it has news articles that you can adjust the difficulty level. So you can make it, you can read it at its full difficulty, or you can kind of take it down. The smaller numbers get easier, but it has the same main idea. So I often use that with my beginning students, or if I have students in the same class who have different reading levels, sometimes I can give students a harder version of the same article or an easier version of the same article. Another website that I really like is VOA News. That's the Voice of America News, and that's more world news, not just US centered. And it's in, I say easier English, because it isn't really easy English, but it is simplified. This next one, I only found kind of recently, but I've been using it with my learners. So Culips is a series of podcasts. I think there's actually 6 or 7 different podcasts there, but they are for language learners. And so they'll have like a 15-minute episode. How do you order coffee? Or how do you respond to good news? How do you make small talk at a party? Very practical English. It's recorded by an American and a Canadian, and they speak slowly, and I'm using those with my students. And the very last one on this slide is Coffee Break English, which is another podcast, and that's really for true beginners. There's a lot of it actually in Spanish as they're explaining things. All right, so those are just some other tips there, some other places. I am sure you already have places where you like to find input, but just to always expand the library a little bit there. So once you have all of these sources, another thing that goes along with input is lesson sequencing. And I will just say this, lesson sequencing is more important than ever. Here online, teaching digitally, having a lesson sequence that flows, that makes sense, it's really, really important for our students to make sense of the instruction, to really understand and to learn and be able to use the English. So let's talk about lesson sequencing. Students benefit from multiple examples of both targeted language and natural language. Don't worry, when you are giving them sentence frames, when you are giving them word banks and examples, you are not doing the work for them. So this came up recently. There was a teacher I was coaching, and I think she's just wonderful because she will ask the questions that I think other people sometimes are a little bit afraid to ask. And this teacher who I was working with, she asked me, she's like, if I give them the words on the slide, if I give them too many examples, haven't I done the work for them? And so I had to reassure her, and I want to reassure you, giving lots of examples is great. That's how their brain gets used to it. That's how they become ready to create their own responses. So just keeping that in mind as we look at this sequence here. So here's kind of some of the steps in a lesson, at least, and I mean, everyone has a different way they do their lesson. But when I am teaching beginning English teachers, I work in a program where I get to teach people who are becoming English teachers, doing their TESOL certificate. This is the sequence that I teach them. You have to start by catching your students' attention. Then comes kind of the teaching portion where you're introducing the new material. Then you practice in a very controlled way. That's where you're giving all those examples and the word bank. That is practice. It's just controlled practice. Then they practice with a little bit more freedom. Then they practice with even more freedom. And then you give them tests or homework. We've all probably seen this before. Let me put it in a different format. These are the terms we actually used in a program I attended a long time ago now, but we would say you activate, you present, and we used to require specifically there had to be at least 3 examples of the language, 3 target language examples, whether they were dialogues, whether they were audios, something so the students had a lot of chances to hear and understand it. Then the controlled practice, the semi-controlled, the communicative, and the extent. So these two look a little different from each other, but it's the same basic sequence. It's the same flow. Unfortunately, something that I have seen a lot this year, and it's happening, it's true, that there is a tendency in distance learning to just put a lot of exercises or a lot of practice together on a topic. And I've seen teachers just kind of cover material in the workbook. They're not really going through these phases of a lesson anymore. There's not the activate, then the teach, then the practice, and the sequence and practice. It kind of gets jumbled together. I've seen this quite a bit. This is why I'm saying a lesson sequence right now is more important than ever because our students really benefit from plenty of examples and practice, which becomes sequentially more challenging. So what does this look like? I mean, if you're teaching by WhatsApp, this can be really challenging to think, okay, well, how do I do an activate phase, then a teach, then this practice, that practice, that practice, because you're having to really put it in order. And I guess that's where you have to talk to your students about the sequence, be very clear. Step 1, step 2, step 3, go through it in this order because it is most beneficial. If you are fortunate enough, if you're meeting your students in class on Zoom or on Google Meets, we don't use those classes in the same way as you would have face-to-face because I know you probably flip some things, you're using homework or email in a different way, but you can still keep some of those same phases. When you start the class, you still want to do something that you catch their attention. You want to show lots of examples early on, and really that progressive practice where it's going from very controlled, the students don't have to make a lot of choices, they're very supported, to freer and freest, we can still keep that online. So that brings us into our third topic here, kind of our final topic out of the ones I was going to be talking to you about, and that is meaningful practice. So when I think of, meaningful practice in the past, it maybe looked like this. I want my students to sit and talk. But of course, I know that they're not meeting like this. I don't want them to. This would be very bad. So I want to ask you, what is meaningful practice in distance learning? And this time my hint is just to make up your own definition, because you know your students. What does meaningful practice look like right now in your context? I would really like to hear, I'd really like to know what is working for you. And then I'll share here, I want to share what I think is important, but please, you've been so great in the chat. Let's see some stuff there. For me, meaningful practice has kind of 3 components. And I probably should have built this in a circle, because for me, these 3 things lock together, they interweave. So for me, meaningful practice has a reasonable amount of challenge. It's not too easy and it's not too hard. It's kind of targeted. Meaningful practice, it focuses on communication. And meaningful practice, it motivates students to continue. So let me give you kind of a counter example for these. What are some things I've seen where it didn't work? Okay, so when I say it has a reasonable amount of challenge, I've seen something recently where the teacher had just taught a new grammar structure and a new vocabulary list and the previous class's vocabulary list, and all 3 of those were needed on the same exercise, and they didn't have any reference material. So the students were scrambling. You could just see the stress on their face. The students were like flipping. They had workbooks, so they were flipping to one part of the workbook and then to the other, trying to look at this vocabulary list and this vocabulary list, just to understand the questions that were being asked. So when I talked with the teacher later, I kind of had to say, maybe that was more challenge than you were looking for. Would it be possible to do this exercise again, focusing on just one vocabulary list? So if the students didn't remember the words, they could look on one page of their book and they could figure it out. So they didn't have to flip back and forth. At the same time, then I saw another thing recently where the students were just sitting there in class. They were in a Google Meets, and they were just copying words from off of one verb chart into another verb chart. That's not very challenging. There isn't much mental engagement. You aren't really learning too much that you need to be doing there in class. They were spending class time just copying it from one part of the workbook to another. Now, you need to practice your verbs. We all have to practice our verbs, but that didn't focus on communication. So both of those examples, the one that was too hard because there were too many moving pieces, there were 3 different language demands in one assignment, and the one that didn't focus on communication because, it didn't focus on communication, both of those assignments were demotivating. The students weren't motivated. Yeah, I'm learning. Yeah, I can use English. They were getting frustrated or maybe even annoyed. And so it didn't feel meaningful to them. It probably wasn't the best use of practice time. So what are questions that you can kind of ask yourself, or questions I ask myself when I'm designing a practice activity online? So here are kind of my 5 questions here. When I'm designing a practice activity for my students in distance learning, is the task clear? Do they have the tools or resources that they need in order to accomplish this task. So going back to that story I just shared, do they need to look in a bunch of places, or can I give them the word bank? Can I give them an example or a sentence frame? Are they going to be confused? I think we've all noticed this, that it's harder to notice when your students are confused. It is harder to get them back on track. So we have to be extra clear. We have to be more intentional that our classes are clear. The next step there, the next thing I ask myself, is this meaningful practice? Is this a good use of student time? Can the student self-evaluate? Or in another way, I could say, how will the students know if they did it right? Now, with some exercises, they can just check the answer key. There's a very clear yes or no, right or wrong answer. But other times I need to give them a rubric, or I need to give them a checklist, and they need to be used to that. They need to know how to check their own work. I think that's something hopefully a lot of students are learning. Something they will take out of distance learning is just to go back and look at their work one more time before they turn it in. Maybe in the past, some students completed the work, turned it in, hope for the best. The teacher will tell me if I didn't do it well. Well, now I actually try to build in how can the students check for themselves. Now, another type of meaningful practice, I ask myself, can the students work in small groups? And that's not possible on every assignment. And there's a lot that they can do on their own that's very useful. But I add this in here because if we're talking about a focus on communication, we're talking about trying to make this very communicative. Well, it's more communicative if I talk to a classmate on WhatsApp, or it is more communicative if I, work with someone in a breakout room. That's more in line with my goals, that they be able to communicate in English, than it would be if they're just practicing on their own. So there's a place for both. Another question I ask myself is, are there routines? And I think routines are more important than ever, right up there with lesson sequencing. Students need to know where to go to find the assignment. They need to know how to turn it in. If every Monday they have some sort of a listening activity, and every Tuesday they need to do reading, and then on Wednesday you meet for class, something that just routines take away some of the anxiety. Remember, almost an hour ago when we were talking about the affective filter and we were talking about anxiety? Well, routines can lower that stress. So how do we build that into our classes? And finally, is the language target closely related to a recent lesson? I want to make sure I'm setting my students up for success. I think when we're talking about meaningful practice this year, it is so important. Students have to believe that they can practice on their own. And like I said before, routines are so important. They're such a big part of this, as are rubrics and checklists, if you can give it to them. And when I say rubrics, let me say my word on rubrics. I don't mean that you have to have a formal rubric that has the exact language from Minedu or from the regulations that say the exact language of what they need to do. That's a different type of rubric. When I'm talking about a student using a rubric, you want to describe, what does a successful assignment look like? Okay, is it supposed to have, 3 sentences? Is it supposed to have your verbs conjugated in the present tense, the past tense? What are the components? And you put that on the rubric, and then you describe what would be lower or what would be higher. Sometimes I think checklists. I'm a big fan of checklists actually with students, because they can go through and they can just see. So rubrics or checklists, it depends on your class, and it depends on how you've been able to teach them to use them. You know, these are tools they have to learn how to use. And to me, it goes on, it's kind of a sequence here. So getting students to believe that they can practice on their own, at first, maybe you're giving them the checklist. You're really telling them, when you read this out loud, make sure you are pausing in between your sentences. Take your phone and record yourself talking, reading this. You don't even have to send it to anyone, but record it and then listen for this. And you're telling them exactly what to do. But eventually, over time, you know, we're trying to move them to be more self-directed. We're trying to move students to where they can set their own goals. So it has to start with that belief. Again, going all the way back to the affective filter. We can't ignore that. The affective filter with the I can do this belief through, well, now that I believe I can, how can I do this? And of course, the more successful they are over time, nothing builds confidence like success. So if they're successful over time and you can help them recognize that, then they can start setting their own goals. So I am just about at the end of my time here today, and I know that I think I'm the last speaker today. So I want to just sum up a little bit of what we've got, what we have done here, what we've talked about in this last hour. And first I want to say, thank you all for being here. It's amazing on a Saturday. Thank you to the team in PIURA. I was in PIURA last year for this actual conference. I was able to be there in person, so it's great to, be there in this different format this year. Just to look back on everything that we've talked about. We started out by talking about the affective filter. As someone said so well in the chat, that's really, what is the student's emotional state in class, or what is the student's emotional state in relationship to English? And we know that can impact how they learn. I gave you my metaphor, the window. If the shades are open, if the blinds are open, then the sun shines in and you're learning the language. But the anxiety, the lack of self-confidence, the lack of motivation, which is so often, a lack of motivation is really tied to anxiety. Those are blocking. And so online, you shared some great ideas in the chat. I really do appreciate all those ideas and how much English teachers have invested in building a community, in trying to make their students feel safe, to support them this year, which is great for them as human beings, and because of the affective filter, it's great for them as language learners. Then we talked about opportunities for input, and I did share starting with the americanenglish.state.gov, and then I think I did 4 other websites that I do like to use, where you can find appropriate, relevant materials. Of course, once you have those, students need examples. Input before output. They got to listen. They have to read. They have to have those sources. And so structuring your lesson plans very intentionally, very logically, moving from less challenging, more controlled practice to freer, more challenging, more complicated practice. That sequence is so essential here online. And then we kind of close by talking about meaningful practice. And I shared some of those questions that I like to ask myself as I'm designing a lesson. And I'm sure as you have been self-reflecting and you've been learning from so many experts today, you have more questions that you could add on to that. So before we close out, I do want to make sure that I'm thanking everyone here for the Teacher Development Conference. And I also want to thank Relo Andes. That is the Regional English Language Office at the U.S. Embassy in Lima, Peru. And if you don't follow them already on Facebook, that's facebook.com/ReloAndes. I get to work with them quite a bit. I'm very lucky. And we put on a monthly webinar. We actually have one coming up next week. So make sure you're following so that you can catch some other training opportunities there. And now we're really at the end of my presentation. I do want to open it up for questions. And I think maybe Jonathan was going to join me back on screen. Ah, there you are. Good to see you, my friend. So if you have comments, oh, I can't hear you. You are still muted there. There we go.
So thank you very much. Thank you for your all information. We are too happy to be here with us. So thank you. Yes, let's see. I saw many comments maybe in your presentation or during your presentation was amazing. You respond every question that you can see in the comments too. So was amazing. Yeah. Thank you to be here. I received last question for you. So the question is how to help the problem with the internet access. So, some people or some students connect with their mobile phones. They are really slow, the internet connection, and this time of got complicated to teaching through the digital means. So what did you do in this opportunity situation, or in these cases?
So I think the most important thing is to know what your student's situation is. And it's hard to give just one answer because we have such a variety of people here watching. So there are students, there are teachers I support who I work with whose students are using just their phones, but they have fairly stable internet connection. They have some data. And then there are other teachers I know whose students only have WhatsApp. So whichever one is really happening, I think teachers need to know which one is happening for their students and then adapt the strategies. So I think it's harder to do all of these by WhatsApp. That's just the honest truth. But if you're on WhatsApp only, you can still put an emphasis on the effective filter. You can still make sure that your students know you're there and you're responding to them. I know lots of people message with their students and, you have to set what limit is appropriate to you, but you can still build that human connection. You can still, most of the time through WhatsApp, send audios. And I really like audio files I can download. That's been a big change for me as a teacher, is making sure there are things I can download versus things I can stream. So making that switch over, and that's why I shared some of the websites I did, because those are ones where you can download and you can send. And finally, the practice. It is, I think I mentioned it a little in there, it's still really about sequencing. So you can still put it in a good sequence where you're activating and then you're practicing and you're giving them a variety of tasks. It's a different rate of communication because it's not instantaneous. It isn't me talking, you answering, me responding. It can be separated by days at a time, but you can still have the conversation just with a whole lot of patience. Oh my goodness, we're all learning patience, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. Every teacher has different reality, every student have every student is a different world. So they have their different problems and they have different reality. So thank you so much. We can see another question for you. So this is an interesting question. So how can you make warm up or a warm up to introduce your class? Do you have a specific strategy maybe to create a warm up before start a great topic?
It depends on the class. I really like to show pictures. You could probably tell from my PowerPoint, I am a very visual person. So a lot of times I will show my students a picture that is relevant to it, and I'll ask them questions. If my students are a little bit more advanced, I like to ask them questions that maybe don't really make sense at first, or like the question makes sense, but they can't guess what the topic is going to be because I want to make them curious. I want them to go, wait, what are we talking about? And really start thinking. I have a really good friend. She uses songs. I don't use songs quite as much, but she has a song at like the start of every single class, and it's amazing. Her students are really engaged. So depends on what you like to do as a teacher and what your students like to do as well.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree with you. So thank you, Rachel. Thank you here. Was a great presentation. So was a great information that you can share it for all teachers to be here. So thank you so much, Rachel. We are so happy to be here with us and was amazing topic. So thank you one more time and see you the next opportunity, Rachel.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye. So now, dear teacher, at the end, thank you very much to the speaker for their participation for the all day. For the first one in the morning, okay, Deborah, Eugenia, and David White, and for this one too about John Galindo and Rachel Martin. So thank you to the all teachers who have connected this afternoon, and it has a wonderful experience to be able to share this information with the all college. We thank to our executive director, Ms. Lita Ramirez, and our academic department about inaugural region, Ms. Cecilia for children, Ms. Francis Prada, and our academic director, Carlos Gonzalez, and also SBS, Librería International, and Embassy of United States for making this extraordinary event possible, which leaves us with a lot of information, great device, and valuable academic ticket information. So thank you to be here, guys. Thank you to Vicente Ceballos and his amazing groups of the north of Peru. So for the desestimation and production of this wonderful event that has allowed us to share knowledge with the all English teacher, a special mention to the all thing. So remember, dear teacher, the all registered teacher that will receive by email, okay, from your confer to their attendance and the lecture, and they'll receive their certificate of attendance. Have a beautiful afternoon. Until next time. Thank you very much for all, dear teacher. Goodbye. See you the next opportunity. I was Jonathan Peña, your host.